I believe it's on the actual Color Computer archive under apps. The disk that I had created many years ago is called Generate Fog, and that is an installer disk, not the actual program. On the installer disk, there's a lot of support files. Custom one is actually a basic overlay, so if you're using a non-HDB-DOS system with just floppy drives, that would be the version that gets installed. You don't need to know this. The installer chooses based on the ROMs that it detects. PAL-bin. I think that's a data file. I don't remember exactly. Tape exfers. So that is Roger Schrag's tape transfer utility, tape to disk. And I included it with Color Fog with Roger's permission. High-res subroutines for the Tandy adapter and the ColorMax adapter. I've got a couple of eMode 4 images. I saved those with a .pm4 extension. I've got some font files because they're fun to play with. Now we're getting to the actual program. So there's three main modules. FL is Fog Loader, and it's .ccb because that is the module that will get copied for Color Basic. FOG.ccb is the main Fog module. Setup is a setup program. And then you've got the same three files but for HDB-DOS. So install bass is actually the installer program that will create some of the data files that the system needs. And when you run it, it creates a log file so that you can see, if you have a way to get the log file out of the Color Computer and into a PC, you can see what it did throughout the installation progress. So before anything else, I want to show some parts of the installer bass. Alright, so I'm going to load install. List through 10. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm going to do this. 40. That's better. So you can see this is copyright 2002, 2004, and it's got my old Yahoo email address on there. Nobody will really be using this version unless you have an HDB-DOS setup with numbered virtual floppies. You can use this on there, but it will not work with a CoCo SDC, and it definitely won't work with a FOG.DAT. But if you have a traditional HDB-DOS setup for Color Basic, then Color Fog is a great way to browse through your disks and transfer files around with some limitations. So let's just take a look at this. First of all, I think line 5 is looking for CoCo 3 specifically. List 995. Sorry, this program requires a Color Computer 3, and yeah, so first thing line 5 does is check to see that you're running a CoCo 3. And two pokes that I'm not sure exactly what they do. 55232, 0 and 55318, 20. I have no idea what those do. Alright, so line 6, this one I do know. Poke NH ADEB, 57. That disables the break key on a Color Computer 3. Okay, so I've got my disable the break key, files 3, clear 1000. So I'm setting up 3 files so that I can open and create those files in my installer. Basically, it's going to create data files. On error, go to 980 with 40. So lines 20 through 24 are basically peeking into the ROM in specific locations to see if it is the specific ROM that I'm looking for, and if it doesn't match exactly, then it will bail. Line 30 is a line that will detect how much RAM you have. So once it's gone through all of that, it's found a version of the ROM that it likes. It has decided which files to copy. It's going to ask you which drive you want to install ColorFog to. So that would be any valid HDBDOS drive above drive 3. And line 60 and 65, kind of a little Easter egg. So right here, lines 75 through 84, those are all basically creating the array of file names that it wants to copy to install the program. And then 85 is actually starting the copy process. Line 88 has the data statements that are the basically the full array. So in line 90 we start generating the data files. And you can see it creates a text string generating data files plus our string, which is our return, carriage return. Go sub 8 is what writes that line to the disk file. T string is FOG.DAT. That is the first file that we're generating. Okay, so FOG.DAT is actually the file that contains all of our graphics in HDRAW format. So dstring sub 0, that's actually our mouse cursor. Dstring of 1 is, I think it's the SDC icon. I know dstring sub 3 is a 3.5 inch, and dstring sub 5 is the 5 1/4. And I believe dstring sub 4 is just a blank, like an empty box. Dstring sub 6 is used a lot throughout the program. That is actually my square buttons at the top right of the screen. Basically, most of the buttons are designed to be drawn from the center so that they can be rotated 180 degrees. That gives you the 3D look and feel, whether it's popped up or when you click it, it presses it down by drawing it upside down. So basically we've just gone through all those lines, setting the dstring variables. Now we're going to actually create the file. Open for output number 1, FOG.DAT. For n equals 0 to 16, write number 1, dstring sub n, go sub 8, colon next. The go sub 8, again, that writes a line to the log file on the disk. It lets me know when it has completed that step. Okay, and then it closes that file, plays a note, tstring equals zstring. If you remember, zstring was success and a carriage return. So basically in the log file it's going to say installing FOG.DAT, and then it's going to have the tstring is just a period every time it goes go subs 8, so it's going to have 16 dots after that, and then it'll say success. Now we go to line 200 on. 200 on creates the error code data. So the error code data is basically a translation from the numeric codes to English. Okay, so tstring equals error code dat, go sub 8, so that's writing that line to the log file. Open data number 1, tstring comma 22. So 22 is the character length for all of my error codes. So the way I did this, because there's a whole bunch of error codes, every 10 error codes I go sub 8, so it does 10 and it'll put a dot in the log file. So it's not doing like 40 separate dots. So you get the idea of how you write this to the buffer and then you put the buffer on the disk. Then we close number 1, print the success to the log, and now we're up to the next section, which is the help file. So the help file is just straight up text, and Realistically, the help file is not something that I've fully fleshed out in there. It's kind of generic, but there is a little bit of help in there, not much. And 390 closes that. So 900 basically is telling us the installation is complete, and this disk O string operation in line 900 is actually putting a label on the disk. It's giving it a name. Alright, and then it gives you some basic instructions. The first time FOG runs, it'll go into setup and generate the configuration file. Okay, so we've taken a look at the installation program. What we're going to do now, I'm going to actually go ahead and run it. So what I have here is my FD500 disk controller that has HDB-DOS burned to a ROM. I'm going to go ahead and let's turn this off first. Install this into my MPI Mini. I'm going to push the switch back so that it boots from this cartridge instead of this. So this is the SDC. Normally with HDB-DOS I would have like a hard disk controller here. What I've got here is basically just two floppy drives, a GoTech and a 3.5-inch PC floppy. I do have double-sided, double-density media. So this is a floppy disk that I just created. It's my original color fog generator version 1.0 that will work with color basic, with only floppy drives, or with HDB-DOS. Let's give this a boot. Alright, so if I type dir, I get an error because this is HDB-DOS and it's looking for that hard drive and I don't have one, so I have to type drive off. Now if I type dir, alright, if I type dir1, that's the GoTech, but I've gone ahead and formatted that one so that it's blank. So I have a destination drive on the GoTech and a source drive on a floppy disk. This is obviously not a super useful configuration. I'm just doing this for demo purposes. So all we do is run install. Obviously it defaults to drive 0, so I'm not going to worry about typing that in. Going to install the drive 1. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, that's fun. And that's it. A successful installation. Yay. I'll go ahead and hit enter and we'll try it. Should run from the GoTech. Yep. Okay, so it takes us straight into the setup because there was no configuration file. First thing it puts us on is the monitor setting, so I can just hit the space bar, move it over to RGB. Beauty. All right. Well, that's probably more than you really wanted to know about my Color Fog installer. I mainly wanted to show how the data files are created and also run through the actual installation process because it's kind of fun to watch. In part 3 of this series, we'll start looking into the main FOG program, and I think I'll keep the segments down to a single topic at a time to kind of keep them short. First up, we'll look at how the program initializes itself with regards to the color palette, and maybe we'll look into the joystick routines. At any rate, there's plenty more to cover, so I hope you'll join me again for the next episode. Until then, thanks for watching, and remember to CoCo every day.